We're live. All right, we're back at Senate Judiciary. It's still May 1st, and we are going back to H 606, which is now just the relinquishment language concepts that we've talked about. We're gonna get a refresher on some of the changes in the bill in general from Ledge Council and see where we're at. So the floor is open.
Thank you, and good morning, everyone. Eric Fitzpatrick with the Office of the Legislative Council. Here, as the chair said, to talk about a proposed amendment to 8606, which is an aggravated firearms procedures. And as you mentioned, the basic structure right now is that 8606 contains the relinquishment language that the committee had looked at with a couple of changes highlighted in yellow, which I'll point out. Whereas the other firearms provisions that were in H606 as it came over from the House are now over in S329. So that's at least the proposal for how to structure it at this point. So keep that organization in mind. So as far as specifically with respect to the relinquishment, remember that what this language is proposing to do is there's an existing relinquishment statute, but this expands the procedures, provides more detail about the processes when someone is subject either to a relief from abuse order or extreme protection order is required under existing laws. Remember, it doesn't change any of those times when someone might be required to relinquish. This establishes procedures for when someone already is under existing law. And you'll see one technical change on page 1 is exactly line 9 here. The title of the section is amended to reflect the fact that this doesn't cover just RFAs anymore, it covers their books as well.
Is there a way to make it even more clear on line 3 where it says an act relating to firearm procedures and make it say it's an act relating to firearm relinquishment procedures?
Yes, that is actually in, that's on page 20. That's where the proposal was to change the title along those lines.
Yeah, thank you. You bet. Any questions on that?
So as far as the changes in the language that you're looking at now, as I mentioned, this has to do with the procedures for relinquishment when the underlying law requires that. And one of the types of procedures that's involved here is that law enforcement agencies can either store the firearms themselves or they can store it with a federally licensed firearm dealer, an FFL. When that happens, this is on page 7. If the law enforcement agency does choose to do that, then they have to provide notice to the firearms owner. So the firearms owner will know information about the storage with the FFL. And a proposed addition to the notice that has to be provided to the owner of the firearm is lines 14 and 15. So they know where the firearm is, basically. The contact information for the FFL, including the dealer's name, phone number, and current address. So they know if it's going to be stored with somebody else, they know where it is and how to contact the person. I think that's something the committee talked about, was concerned about at the last meeting. Over on page 9 is the language change. I think it was Judge Zonay who might have mentioned this, that it was really, chooses wasn't quite the right word there, that the defendant can consent to have the dealer hold firearms, and that's in a situation where, generally speaking, temporary relief from abuse orders or temporary ERFOs aren't subject to this sort of storage, but there's exceptions to that if the defendant consents, is the way it can be phrased now. So if they agree that to have their firearms stored that way, even though it's only a temporary order, it's not a final order yet, they can do that. Last change, I believe, is also related to the storage with third parties and FFL. Yeah, it's over on page 14, but this actually has to do with the model policy. So remember that the bill also involves or requires rather law enforcement agencies to develop a model policy on relinquishment and storage. And so the language on page 14 adds to the components that this model policy has to include. Then specifically, which wasn't there before, procedures for storing firearms with FFLs and third parties, including informing the defendant about the option of third party storage. Now that doesn't mean that the that the model policy has to describe what the FFL procedures are, or what the third party's procedures are, only that there be procedures for how it is that they would transport the firearm themselves to the FFL or to the third party, how they would handle that handoff, basically, and also specifically how they would inform the defendant that they have those options. As far as the mechanics and details of how the firearms are stored when they actually get to the FFL or the third party, that's something that would be part of that model policy. And I think I mentioned already that the change of title that's at the very end, page 20, again, just to be more specific about what the act covers now, it's relating to relinquishment and storage procedures. And those are the only changes between the committee amendment that you're looking at now and the language that you looked at last time when it was a proposed amendment to 329. Maybe no, it wasn't a proposed amendment to this bill, but it was the prior edition.
Any questions either on the changes or the bill in general, or comments, thoughts, feelings?
I have some thoughts and feelings, but they're not related to Bill.
Are there any areas that we previously noted that have to change or do further research on that we haven't done yet? Eric? Or
Not for this one. No, I don't think so. Not that I recall anyway.
so as it's written, is everybody, you're not voting on it today, but are we ready to vote one way or the other in general? Senator?
I'm wondering, Mr. Chair, I know we have Chris Bradley in the room. If we could just hear a final set of thoughts on it from him if he has it. Sir.
Carolyn? Want to offer the same as well to you?
Thank you for the offer, but no, the changes all seem very sensible to me.
Charlie?
Same line. I greatly appreciate your consideration of it and look forward to seeing you move forward.
All right, so this bill is vote ready, and committee, we will probably vote on it Wednesday of next week, depending on what the House does. And so just be prepared to vote on this next week, and that's pretty much it. So thank you all for your work on this. And we can now pivot to 329. Did we get a new copy of that?
No, I think we were still working off the last one. Well, you can, yeah, I think that's what we're at this point.
It's 1.1. Well,
Yeah, exactly.
And if I might, Mr. Chair, I believe when I left the room yesterday, I'm not sure if you went further, but I had a comment on page 8, line 14. And I was saying at that time that after thinking about this, I can see the logic behind it. And I guess the wording is tight enough for me now, but I don't write it on line 14. The data, the dealer shall be entitled to review. As it makes, right, it seems to give them a choice about whether they.
you wanted it to be the dealer shall refuse.
Yes.
Right?
And they already have flexibility built in with satisfactorily. So I didn't want to double the flexibility.
Anybody have any issues with that change?
No.
Well, since we're on here, Eric, do you have any new information or comments on this section of the 3-day waiting period?
No, other than that, I was trying to look into a little bit more the issue of mailing firearms generally, or shipping is probably a better way to put it. And it seems like, as far as I could tell, that there are significant restrictions on the ability to mail firearms generally. They're somewhat situation specific, but and also specific to the mailer, who's the person doing the shipping. It seemed that both UPS and FedEx would permit shipping under certain circumstances, but always require tracking number, receipt, that sort of thing. USPS, and also sort of step back for a moment, sort of generally, shipping handguns between individuals is prohibited. Generally, that's illegal, generally speaking. So that can't be done by anybody, anyway. Other than there are some exceptions to that, one of which is FFLs. But FFLs can do that and are permitted under federal law to do that. If they do it, though, there does have to be an affidavit, which includes the date of shipment and that sort of thing. There's a particular label that the Postal Service requires that also includes the date of shipment. So there's a lot of detailed documentation that's required when that is done to an FFL.
So did you say whenever a firearm is shipped between FFLs, there's an affidavit involved?
Handgun.
I'm sorry?
Handgun, I said. And whether handgun shipped.
With the handgun. So
But you couldn't ship handguns.
With that exception, there's a few exceptions: law enforcement, military officers, National Guard, law enforcement, authorized Postal Service employees. I'm listing out the list of exemptions. And licensed fire manufacturers, dealers, importers, upon the filing of the acquired affidavit and certificate, and it has to be addressed to one of those. No, they can't ship to a private person. It's between those things.
is there any way that having just the word receipt, to me, I'm slightly uncomfortable with just the word receipt. Are there any more qualifiers we can put in there, like like shipping information
Sure.
that has a verifiable tracking number? Because it's not particularly challenging to fabricate a receipt. Yeah, because if you buy something online, you get an email. If you have any skills in Photoshop, you can easily fabricate a fake email, or just make a fake email address to email yourself a supposed receipt. So we put a qualifier that requires a verifiable tracking number. That way, purchaser shows up with this receipt and the tracking number, which my understanding has to accompany every firearm shipment.
No.
No. Okay.
Every handgun shipment.
Every handgun shipment.
So, and according to, at least what I'm reading under the postal rights, and again, this was not an easy topic to track down the definitive answer to this, so I asked Chris about it as well. But as far as I can look, when you turn to rifles, then intrastate, so within the state, a person can't ship to another person, but does have to be used, this is the quote, using a class of mail product or extra service that provides tracking and signature capture and delivery. So you're covered in there. There's always going to be a tracking.
If it's from one state to another.
No, that's intra. That's within state. You
Oh,
can't ship
okay.
intrastate, individuals. Shipments between licensed FFLs, however, as Postal says, is permitted in that. The Postal Service recommends that these items be mailed using a class of mail product or extra service that provides tracking and signature capture and delivery. So that's what I wasn't so sure about.
I think if
But you can still require what you want.
Long gun.
Language. Yeah,
so with long guns, there may or may not be tracking numbers.
correct.
I think it's a safer path to say if there's a verifiable tracking number.
Yep.
Regardless of, and if there isn't one, then you gotta wait again.
Right.
That's my initial opinion on that.
I'm there with you too, because I think, it's on the purchaser if, hey, there's not gonna be a tracking number, I know I gotta wait 3 days. But if I'm purchasing it online, getting tracking information, I'm good to go.
Yeah.
Depending on, I feel like it would be infrequent that there would not be a tracking number. So if there isn't, you don't get the 3 days.
Yeah, especially, God, like, I mean, cause you, what,
I'm okay with the shipping.
Sarah North,
I'm fine with this. It is a go, so I'm fine with it.
can we make that change, please?
Yeah, absolutely.
I do have one question on that. Just to make sure we stay within our lanes here. If something's coming from out of state or whatever else, does this supersede any federal firearms regulations or? Is my question.
No, you wouldn't. You wouldn't, federal, you're sort of adding, you're not superseding it, but you're kind of, the federal regulation is the floor. You're going a little bit higher for that type of situation, but, you wouldn't be overruling. Sorry. use the word. I know, that's, as soon as I said it. Oh, it's not. Wouldn't be, whatever you said, or North.
We'll be overruling the
Right.
common law.
No, definitely not.
Supersede.
That was the word I was looking for. Exactly.
Any other questions or issues on this 3-day waiting piece?
The only quick question, just to make sure that I'm clear on it. Did you want receipt and, or would just to say if the transferee fails to provide documentation of verified tracking? Because
Receipt and a
Receipt.
verifiable tracking
Okay.
number, because. Yeah, I think that's.
all right, sounds good.
So let's start from the top one more time. With the general review on each section and confirm if we're ready to vote on the bill in general. Saturday.
I have changed my mind about the dispensing. And I could go along with excluding that. What we're talking about.
I would of course support that and it would impact my vote on the bill. With that language out, I can support what's left in the bill.
So we're going from page 1 to page 5. So, all right. Talking about page 5, right?
Yeah. So it'd just be eliminated, we'd still be roping in selling and trafficking. We're not doing it.
And my understanding, Eric, correct me if I'm wrong, is that as this language is here, it only pertains to this stuff. We're not changing larger underlying law, correct?
Correct. You would not be legalizing the dispensing of the drug. That would still be illegal.
I mean, I would be okay with that, but
Right.
I know that there was some concern earlier on in the conversation that might be changing underlying law.
Somewhere in the building, they make it for.
Right. That would still be a criminal offense.
Yeah, I've got a different bill to do that.
Right, that's right. So this would only be for purposes of what counts as a violent crime. For purposes of prohibiting a person from possessing a firearm.
I don't have an issue with that.
Yeah.
Any other final questions?
I three, I'll have a problem with it, so it doesn't matter because I would make dispensing in and stuff like this. I'm sure it's not the same. Dispensing it, because I want it.
It's not that big of a problem with it, so. Yeah.
A lot of people are applying.
So we'll strike the words dispensing and the violations of dispensing on page 5.
Yes.
So.
Also vote there.
I think he's got Eric has to make some of these changes first.
But I mean, we'll take it up next week as opposed to doing it today.
Well, let's see where we are in the next 10 minutes. Next sections. We have any issues or questions on section 2? Any final changes? The person in need of treatment section.
Yeah, that's the tweaking to the language recommended by the Department of Mental Health to not be over inclusive as far as who's being prohibited, because I think I mentioned that I think an inadvertent consequence of the way the language had been drafted was that the person having been found incompetent to stand trial for a serious felony such as a homicide would not have been prohibited from possessing a firearm, whereas a person who had been found incompetent for a nonviolent felony would be, so obviously did not the intent of the language. So the clarification is to have a parallel between the NGRI, not guilty by reason of insanity group, and the incompetent to stand trial group. That's on page 6 on 16 to 20. So either one of those instances, if the person it's a violent crime that the reason was NGRI or finding of incompetency, then that's what makes the person more prohibited. And yeah, so I didn't quite get a chance to mention this last time. There's the other piece there, the other change actually, you'll see is a little bit higher on the page, line 14. That's the idea that when the court in the proceeding related to the criminal charges has found someone either NGRI or incompetent to stand trial, then they have that next hearing to find out whether or not their person needed treatment or a person needed further treatment. So they can find either one of those two things. If that's the case, they get committed to DMH. And so DMH suggested, since the court can make either one of those two findings after they've been found dangerous, because it can be person in need of treatment or a patient in need of further treatment. That's the language on line 14. And a parallel change is made in the last section of bill, page 12. This is the existing law that requires DMH to report these folks to NICS, the National Criminal Background Check System. Again, it's missing those same two words, the 11 and 12. And DMH said, wait, they already report those people? Like, this isn't changing anything, won't change anything in practice. They already get reported and they're required to read. They're already prohibited under federal law as well, and they get reported, but their counsel suggesting if you're going to make this change in the other one, this is what we do. Yeah. Be consistent. So that's why that section is amended as well.
Any questions? What's the
And then the other two sections, there aren't any changes to sections. We already, I think, talked about that now section 3, which was the shipping, right?
Yeah.
Section 3, yeah, that is section 3. No changes to sections 4 and 5. Though section 4 is a prohibition on machine guns that tracks the federal law verbatim, other than on page 10, those couple of sentences added about making clear that prohibited machine guns do not include any weapons that aren't required to be registered by the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives. So it makes it basically a true up between this law and what federal law prohibits in terms of machine guns.
Any questions or comments on that section? Next section.
No changes to this one either. This is the prohibition on possession of firearms in premises that are licensed to serve alcohol. So again, this is the statewide prohibition. It's a 1-year misdemeanor, similar to other location restrictions that we have in Vermont law and have passed over the last few years, hospitals, polling places, et cetera. There's also a posting requirement, which is also similar to the hospital statute, which I believe is at the very end. Yes, page 12, line 3. have to be posted conspicuously at each public entrance. There, that the committee has gone through before for, second class licenses, for example, those are places where you buy alcohol to drink off premises that convenience store, grocery store, whatever the case may be. And sidewalks that pass through licensed premises, an exception for that area as well. And special event permits, dining cars specifically, that was also in the bill as passed the Senate last year, I think it was. And your standard exceptions for law enforcement, military, et cetera.
Any questions or comments? Those changes.
I prefer straight out section of that. Fine.
Here, I'm assuming, yeah, I did ask you. I'll say no.
I would also support the no vote on that.
It's two unknown votes, you know.
I also have.
Oh. All right. You can. Where's the last section, section 6? Be go over it.
Yeah, this is the one I just mentioned about the consistency recording.
And you have, okay, so you've got a couple of edits to make.
Yep.
And then you think ballpark how much time might think?
It won't take long.
So I guess I'll ask it differently, or would you be able to come back in 5 or 10 minutes, or would you need to go into next week?
If you said 10 or 15, that would work. Did that work for you guys? Like, what's your time?
We have to be on the floor at 11:30, so.
11:20.
Yeah,
Yeah, your turn.
all right.
11:20.
And while we're waiting, any folks want to testify? Final thoughts on this? No?
Yes. Section 5 has got to go.
I tried.
3 to 2.
Yeah.
Thanks.
3 to 3.
3-3, yeah. Everybody else leave.
Charlie. That's a good one.